greatest player in Premier League history just delivered the most unbelievable individual season ever recorded. White shirt storming forward, Salah. Yet the very next year, he was benched for the biggest games. Arne Slot is practically begging to get sacked. Mo Salah is on the bench for the third straight game. What is Slot thinking? The football club that captured the title playing fearless. Attacking football suddenly turned into a team that lost to anyone. A beautiful pass slipped into the penalty area for Rodgers. And what an absolutely outstanding finish that is. The manager, hailed as a tactical mastermind, suddenly became the guy his own players openly undermined in the press. 29 goals, 18 assists, 47 goal involvements. A totally absurd record nobody in English football ever touched. A squad worth over £500 million suddenly could not string 3 wins together. Liverpool were the champions. Liverpool were an absolute mess. And the only real variable here is what Arne Slot decided to do with Mohamed Salah. To understand how wild that contrast really is, you need the numbers side by side. During 2024, Salah scored 29 goals and 18 assists across 38 games. 47 direct goal involvements, a record nobody had ever hit in a single Premier League season. Liverpool cruised to the title, finishing with a massive points tally that left the rest of the league entirely embarrassed. In 2025-26, with Salah sidelined and stripped of his main role, Liverpool suffered 12 league defeats. They finished 4th and crashed out of every single cup competition. Same football club, same manager. The player changed and everything else collapsed. Here is the sharpest way to frame it. Back in May 2025, Liverpool were the champions of England. 12 months later, keeping largely the exact same core players, plus over £400 million in fresh reinforcements, they were fighting just to finish in the top 5. That is not a rough patch, that is not bad luck. That is a total collapse. And it stands as one of the most dramatic falls from grace this league has ever witnessed. The raw numbers are absolutely brutal. 12 defeats in the Premier League, a number that would have been completely unthinkable under the high standards this club previously set. Beaten 3-0 at home by Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup 4th round. Crushed 4-0 by Manchester City in the FA Cup quarter-final. Eliminated from the Champions League quarter-finals. Losing both home and away to Paris Saint-Germain for a brutal 4-0 aggregate. Every single route to a trophy wiped out. The defending champions did not defend a thing. And at the centre of this mess sits one undeniable truth. The player who produced 47 goal involvements last season was not allowed on the pitch. Arne Slot benched Salah for 3 straight games in November. He even dropped him from Champions League squads as a pure punishment. He forced a new system around a £400 million summer rebuild. And he did it while sidelining the one superstar who proved 12 months prior he was worth more than all of them combined. The glaring detail that exposes this awful season is not the massive defeats, though there were plenty. It is the small, quiet losses. A Liverpool squad with this massive financial investment, this history, and Anfield behind them must have a flaw. Even on a bad afternoon, when the tactics fail, there is a strict baseline of quality that should easily handle average mid-table teams, the promoted clubs, the teams fighting relegation. But this season, that flaw vanished. Liverpool were routinely beaten by opponents they should have destroyed comfortably. They dropped points in matches that should have been a walk in the park. They stepped into away grounds completely stripped of the aura that used to guarantee fear. Opponents looked at Liverpool this year and smelled blood, not danger. That mental shift is absolutely everything in elite football. And it does not stem from a sloppy tactical setup alone. It happens when a squad loses its true identity, its edge, that unspoken dressing room rule that says we do not lose games like this. That belief, that razor edge, that standard was Mohamed Salah. Not just his raw goals and assists, though those were completely irreplaceable. It was the culture he brought inside the building every single morning. The guy who arrived first, treating basic training drills like a Champions League final. A player who point blank refused to accept a drop in standards from himself or anyone around him. You cannot buy that fire for £400 million. And it is exactly what Arne Slot never seemed to value until it was packing its bags. Slot built his approach to football on a very specific philosophy. Control the tempo, limit the risks, accept that the sport will occasionally hand you results you do not deserve. Honestly, it is a perfectly reasonable way to run a team, but it is a terrible way to manage Liverpool, because their entire identity, forged by Jurgen Klopp over 9 years and lived out by Salah for 8, was the exact opposite. Losing was simply not acceptable. It felt personal. Every defeat was a wound you had to address, correct, and refuse. That ruthless mentality always starts with your absolute best player. When the guy sitting at the top of the pyramid sets his bar in the clouds, the whole squad gets dragged up to meet it. When Salah refused to train at anything below max intensity, every single player out on that grass felt the pressure to match him. When he flatly rejected a bad result, it completely set the tone for how the dressing room handled setbacks. You do not draw that up on a tactics board, and you certainly cannot buy it with a massive transfer budget. You get it by having the right leader inside the building, living those high standards daily until they feel non-negotiable. Think about what 47 goal involvements actually means. It means across almost every match of a 38-game season, Mohamed Salah was directly responsible for a goal. He was either burying it himself or setting up a teammate. No footballer in the entire history of the Premier League ever contributed to that many goals in one single campaign. That is not just a great player having a hot year. That is one man putting an entire squad on his back for 12 straight months. And the response from the manager who reaped the rewards was to stick him on the bench. This season, that iconic player was phased out, and the brutal consequences followed immediately. In massive matches, the body language was completely off. Senior players just looked sorry for themselves after a loss, instead of furious. That fierce urgency that defined Liverpool for years, gone. Replaced by a quiet resignation you could actually feel from the stands. Because when your main example leaves, the standards walk out the door right behind him. Slot either didn't get that, or he figured he could just replace it with a tactical system. He was dead wrong. Liverpool blew over 400 million last summer. Florian Wirtz, one of the most thrilling young talents in Europe. Alexander Isak for a British record of around 125 million. Jeremy Frimpong, Milos Kerkez, Hugo Ekitike, Georgi Mamadashvili. The goal was to level up from Premier League champs to Champions League winners. Instead, the top scorer across all competitions wasn't Wirtz, it wasn't Isak, it wasn't Salah either. It was Ekitike. A guy signed as a backup ended up carrying the entire attack. Why? Because the massive money arrivals couldn't adapt to Slot's system. Wirtz struggled. Isak couldn't find his rhythm. The 400 million squad looked way less dangerous, less put together, and just less terrifying than the side Salah dragged to a title the year before. He had 47 goal involvements and set a standard that elevated everyone. This is what should really haunt Slot and the board. Cash wasn't the issue. They outspent almost every other club in European football. The real issue? They ripped apart the club's culture while splashing the cash. And culture is the one thing no blank check can fix overnight. Right before leaving, Salah made his stance crystal clear to the higher-ups. The message was brutally simple, and it was sharp. Liverpool needs a true role model in that dressing room. They need a guy who bleeds the standards, leading by example in training, preparation, and refusing to accept anything but excellence. Without that kind of leader, his warning was blunt. The team would fail to maintain what they built. That's not just a diva complaining. That's the cold assessment of a man who set the standard for 8 years. A guy who watched his club drop 400 million while silently destroying what made them champions. He wasn't begging to stay. He was begging the people staying behind to realize what was slipping away and replace it before the damage became totally irreversible. The league table proves they didn't listen. Slot already had a title in his pocket. Honestly, that's the easiest explanation for why the red flags got ignored. Any manager who just won the Premier League doesn't walk into the next season under real pressure. Regardless of how pre-season goes, that built-in patience was always going to be there. Liverpool's board gave him that long leash as losses piled up through autumn and winter. But there's a deeper reason here. The issues Salah spotted don't neatly show up on a stat sheet. You can't just point at a spreadsheet and prove the culture is dead, the mentality is weak, or the standards dropped. You only see that in small moments, like training ground attitudes, in how the squad responds to a tough loss, in the hunger or total lack of it going into a match they should easily win. Those aren't the kind of numbers that trigger urgent board meetings, but they are the metrics deciding if champions stay champions or quietly fall completely apart. A year ago, Mohamed Salah dropped the greatest individual season this league had ever witnessed. 47 goal involvements, 4 massive individual trophies, a Premier League title, keeping Liverpool at the absolute peak of English football. Yet 12 months later, without him firing, the exact same club is losing to everybody. They blew £500 million on new players who can't click, throwing away every single competition. That connection? not a coincidence. It's the entire story. Arne Slot won a Premier League title riding a generational season from a star he later chose to push aside. He spent 400 million trying to replace those goals, but he totally ignored the winning mentality, the club culture, and the daily standards that made those goals possible. Salah saw it all coming. He left a clear warning, and every single result this season, the brutal thrashings, the minor upsets, the cup exits, and a fourth-place finish that felt like a total failure, proved him right. Mo Salah was dead right about Arne Slot. The league table proved it. The cups confirmed it. And a defending champion getting battered by anyone who felt like it said it louder than anything. If this changes how you view the season, hit subscribe. We don't settle for easy narratives here. We deal in the truth.